We all surround ourselves with objects that have a meaning to us, and they reflect and confirm to us who we are as people. So the things that we put on the walls and on the mantelpiece, and even down to the domestic items that we have in the kitchen, we have a personal relationship with those things. And as a maker of functional ceramics, I have a dialogue with customers often about this very thing, where they buy something from me and it means something special to them. And that reminded me of the literary theory that I learned about as an English student at this university, in fact, which is known as reader response, where no two people read the same text in the same way. They bring their own associations and responses to a text. So I wanted to investigate that idea in terms of 3D objects and combine our special relationship with things that we surround ourselves with that idea of the idiosyncratic response we have to a story, a text or an object. That led me to think, how can I demonstrate that here at the university? And then I thought, well, I could get a group of students who are away from home to talk about objects that they didn't have with them that they might miss from home, and then to describe in words to me that object, and I will write down what they say, and then I will make a version of that object for them out of clay. But very importantly, not to research or Google or look at photos, just use their words. So it's my reader response to their object. So I will end up with a collection of objects which might reflect a cultural difference in the country of origin or the age group of the people that I'm talking to, or maybe it will be universally all the same. We all miss the same objects when we're away from home. And objects that are special to us are special in the same way, or maybe in a different way. So I thought that would be quite an interesting kind of sociological look at meaningful objects, as well as investigating this literary theory. Missing objects can mean more to us than objects that we have. So that's why I thought, well, let's ask the international students what they couldn't bring with them and to describe it. And so that I can, as a gesture of welcome generosity, I will make your thing that's missing, and here it is. And I thought that would be quite a nice idea.
Leo, whose is this? Is this yours?
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Tell me a little bit about it.
It's a prawn, my special seafood in my country, and very similar to my distribution.
Tao, tell me about your objects.
Yes, it's mine. Can I hold it?
Yes, you back down. Yeah. Okay. What do you think of it?
I really like it.
Wow. Tell me what it is. I don't actually know what it is.
Alright, it's a golden money tree because the leaves like the golden coins.
Wow.
And it has a very good meaning. If you in China, if you shake the trees, that means you will earn more income.
So what I did to start with was I found some students that were attending a language school here. So about 95% of them were Chinese, which was quite handy because it's quite nice to focus on students from one country. And they came to the residency studio here, and I interviewed them one by one and asked them to tell me, describe a thing that you're missing from home. And I wrote down word for word exactly what they said in a big book. So I'd collated by the end of it 60 stories of 60 different objects. And then I started making. One of the most touching things that I found out about was this student called Fan, who told me that when she went with her family on days out to enjoy nature from the city they lived in when she was about 8 years old, they would always go to this island in the middle of a lake where there were trees called huyang tree, and they can be about 1,000 years old and really, really massive, and they loved to go to this place and commune with these trees and nature. And you can only approach the island by boat, and weirdly you have to zip wire yourself back, which is really exciting. But anyway, she told me about this, and then a really sad ending to that story was that the city built more suburbs, so they filled the lake in, chopped the trees down, and built over that area of land. So that lake and tree and island only exist in Zhongfan's memory now. So it felt like a lovely privilege to be able to recreate that particular item. The first pieces I made were a dog, a seashell, and some dumplings. And then I thought, I like them, but I'm not that excited about it, and I don't quite know why. And then I spoke to another artist who was a previous artist in residence here, and he asked me some really poignant, searching questions about what I was doing. And then it just struck me that what was missing was I should put these objects on plinths. And in that way, I can make them into more of a special object by framing it on a plinth, but also on the plinth, I can put the words as quotes from the students. So the words become an integral part of the object. Then I thought, do you know what I'm doing? I'm making a modern day Staffordshire figure. Nottingham obviously is in the Midlands, and Stoke-on-Trent in Staffordshire is quite close by. That was a major production of Staffordshire figures, obviously, back in the 18th, 19th century. So I went to the Potteries Museum in Stoke-on-Trent to research Staffordshire figures and found hundreds and hundreds of amazing Staffordshire figures of all kinds of things, reflecting the everyday lives of people in the 18th, 19th century. And I thought, well, that's just perfect, because that's what I'm doing. I'm recording the everyday lives and concerns of people now in that same idiom of the Staffordshire figures. While I was walking around the museum, I noticed a lot of willow pattern china and found out the story of the willow pattern, which was that it wasn't made by somebody in China. It was actually a designer from Stoke-on-Trent who'd never been to China. He just cobbled together various hearsay stories that he'd heard from China and folk stories and made this willow design, which in another way I'm doing, where I've never been to China. I don't really know anything about it, but I'm recording and making objects from China. So that was a beautiful thing to realise, that I was doing A, Staffordshire figures, and B, willow pattern. So on the plinths, I made sure to make them all blue and white and incorporate elements of the willow pattern design onto the plinths to reinforce that lineage of history that I'm like to think I'm at the end of, where I'm continuing those traditions, but in a 21st century way. The physical act of putting the words on the plinths meant I had to edit and cut down to the bare essentials of what was the most important thing that the student had told me. So I was basically making a creative decision on the words in the same way that I was doing with the clay. So it occurred to me that I had two raw materials that I was working with. It was the clay and the words. So the words assumed much more of a significance than I thought they would have at the start of the project. The words of all 60 students was just in this great big folder, and I went through and printed them all out and then cut out and printed in large format all of the phrases that jumped out at me as being particularly beautiful and poignant. So I've got this collection of phrases that are taken completely out of context, but now it looks like I've got a lovely stream of consciousness prose poem of all of the voices that I heard of all these 60 students, and they're scattered amongst pieces. And I think that kind of evokes the background chatter in the room of when all the groups of the students that came to see me, as well as focusing in on the individual phrases in a really nice way. One of the things that I really wanted to do with this project is to introduce visual art, or share visual art with a non-traditional art audience, because I think that if you go into an art gallery, often you feel quite removed from what you're seeing, and basically you're dictated to as an audience member, where, you know, we've made this decision of what goes on the walls, and you're just a passive receiver as an audience member of what you see around you. So I wanted to really try and address that with making the audience an integral part of the process of making. So that's why the words, their words and their response was so important for me in a way, and the idea coming from them is that I'm basically, they tell me what to make. I don't make the decision of what to make, they tell me what to make. And then when I showed them the collection at the end of what I'd made, their positive engagement and the way they were so enthusiastic about seeing what I'd made was really pleasing for me, because they're not an art audience, they're just language students, and most of them are doing subjects like business or engineering. And I don't think they would normally go into an art gallery, but they were so engaged and excited about what I'd made that I thought, you know, this project could be repeated with lots of different non-visual art audiences, and they would equally be as engaged with it, and I'm really pleased with that. The project changed from my initial idea. I was initially looking for the unusual and the different and the quirky and things that I don't know about China. But looking at the pieces now as a collection, I realised that we're all the same underneath. We all miss home cooking, our pets, our family and friends, and landmarks from home. And I think that's a really nice thing to realise, that even though there are superficial differences, we're all the same underneath. And this is a really nice demonstration of that idea.